Okay guys, welcome back to the channel where we are building the world's coolest Can-Am X3 by swapping in a Hayabusa motor. So we're gonna have paddle shifters and a turbo. This project started 4 years ago when I bought the Hayabusa engine to swap into an X3, and a week after that, a tree crushed my shop. So we are finally back on track, we're finally back on schedule, and we're moving forward with it. So check this out. So last week, we got our shifter made. We also got the fuel system plumbed, regulator installed, and return line hooked up, as well as started on some of the engine mounts. So the biggest thing on our list to do, in my opinion, the hardest thing to do, connecting the engine to the transmission, and meaning we can then finally mount the engine. I have found out why no one else has done this, and that is because connecting the Hayabusa engine to the X3 transmission, rather challenging. Let me show you why. In order to connect the Hayabusa output shaft to the X3 input shaft, we're gonna have to build some kind of an adapter on here to space this out, because we need to put this sprocket up here. Oh, that's too big. Well, just made this piece for mock-up, but we need to put this sprocket up here on the front, and a smaller sprocket down there on the bottom, kind of backwards from a motorcycle. But in order to have the gearing that we want, which basically put a top speed about 100 miles an hour, that's what we need to do. But we need to make a real version of this adapter that comes off of here. And then we also need to figure out how we're gonna put a sprocket on this shaft down here. I have a plan, and God willing, I think it's gonna work. So my shameless plug for today is KWI Clutching. Huge thank you to them for sending me a garbage secondary. So I have used KWI Clutching exclusively on the race car. It has never let me down. If you guys are listening to this, I'm sorry. I do not always follow the recommended service interval, but the clutches have never let me down and they always perform flawlessly. So like I said, huge shout out to KWI. Thank you very much for the support. Next thing we gotta do, chop this bad boy up. The plan is there is going to be a sprocket on here, right? Matching up these splines would be a royal pain in the butt. But luckily, Can-Am already gave us a part that has those splines in it. So we're going to chop the outside of this sheave off, and then we're going to machine it down so the sprocket can fit on there. And beyond that, I literally do not know what the plan is. We're just going to see what happens. And that little crack right there is what I was going for secondary clutch. So it is pressed on there. Oh, well, I guess that's how a X3 secondary goes together. The sprocket hub that I got fits absolutely perfectly on this clutch sheave. I am not gonna lie, I am surprised that it fit that good. So I think that this right here is going to be how our lower sprocket is going to be mounted. So this is a tapered setup so that when you tighten this down right here, this sprocket onto the hub, it's supposed to like really squeeze, you know, on the shaft part of this. So once we figure out where this needs to be in and out, I'm actually just going to weld it on there just to be safe. So that is how our lower sprocket is going to work. Now for the challenging one that I have been quite honestly dreading. There's a saying that I always live by whenever I'm building something, and that is, when in doubt, make it stout. This is some 1.5" DOM tubing, 1/4" wall, and this is some 1/2" plate. And basically the plan is we are going to rebuild this guy using those materials. And I kind of figure, okay, if anything on this is going to break with this setup, it's probably going to be this little aluminum piece right here, because I have a feeling that that DOM tubing will hold more power than that little piece of aluminum and its little splines will. The only other thing that I could think would give out first would be my garbage welds. All right, because I have never used one of these rotary table setups before, and have never had to machine holes that are perfectly concentric to a center, I decided to practice on a test piece, and everything worked out good. So decided to prove my theory on something cheap and disposable, and now let's do it for the real thing. Holy cow, I am not gonna lie. For you guys, that was probably only a few seconds, but for me, that was a whole lot of hours of machining stuff. But made a lot of really good progress with a lot of different things. Next thing we gotta do is we need to press things together. So, got this piece, right, that the sprocket adapter is gonna bolt onto. Already threw the shaft in the freezer, so we're gonna go up, throw this thing in the oven. That way, hopefully, when we press them together, it'll be a lot easier. So, big test with this. So, I'm 99% sure Allie does not watch any of the YouTube videos. Pretty sure. She says she does, but here's the test. I don't have an oven down here in the shop. I do have one in the house, though. So, we're gonna see if she knows about us cooking parts in the house oven. So I did wash it down with brake cleaner as best I could. So like hopefully all the, cutting fluid and everything else is off of it, but I don't know. So we're gonna see if we get in trouble for cooking parts in the house. I've done it before and she hasn't noticed yet. Time will tell. We'll bake it 410. Sounds good. Need my car part cooking sheet. It's the secret to make this whole thing work. Okay. Now we'll let her cook for a while.
2 hours later.
Oh yeah, it definitely smells like parts are cooking. That's for sure. Now, back here in the freezer. All right, science, work, please, work with me. Oh, wow, that actually worked out better than I ever thought it would even. Heck yeah. Damn! One of the biggest challenges with this whole thing is gonna be making it so that this shaft and this end plate are perfectly perpendicular to each other, and that we get these holes drilled perfectly so that this shaft spins with zero run out. Whenever you weld anything, as the weld cools, it pulls to one side. So it's gonna be a huge challenge to get that thing to have zero run out. Now that we welded this and everything else, let's see if my overthinking paid off or if it was a giant waste of time. See how much run out this thing has. All right, so there's 0. So let's see how bad it is, actually. Okay. I am shocked. That method actually worked. So I wonder if it was the press fit or if it was clamping it up when I welded it that actually made it, work. I'm calling basically plus or minus 2 thousandths of run out. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna call that just fine. Like considering what crank main bearings, usually those are what? It's like 1,000th to 1,000th and a half. I'm calling that close enough for this. All done machining stuff. This should fit on here really nicely. Probably can't really tell, but there is a little step here, and that will recess in this groove, helping to center, you know, sprocket shaft on this, I don't know, adapter plate thing. And then also, because this is so shallow, I had to machine down the nut as well. So we lost our locking feature on the nut. So my plan there is basically when these, you know, the nut and the washer sit down in there, and this will go on here. Basically, there is a 2007-inch interference fit. So basically, this big thing will clamp down on the nut and smash it down by 2007-inch. So can't back off then, right? If it's sandwiched and squished. So it is finally the moment of truth. Let's see if all this stuff is gonna work. So a little reminder for everybody out there, because, well, I just got reminded of this myself. Whenever you're building cool stuff, usually that means building cool tools as well. So I do not have a way to hold this from spinning so I can torque down that nut. So I had to make a cool tool for it. So made this guy, which is probably still really hot from welding, right? 1/2-inch drive, you know, cut out in it and stuff, and that way it'll bolt on there and will allow me to basically hold it while I torque it down. So yeah, I kind of forgot about that little detail. So just a reminder to everybody else out there, when you're making cool stuff, you also have to make tooling too. Yeah. All right, back to work. All right, let's see if this is a epic fail or not. It's not off to a good start. Well, it might look a little weird right now, but that is the, I don't know what you'd call it, the sprocket shaft, right? That the sprockets will ride on. Now, we do have one more hurdle before we can actually figure out where we're gonna mount this thing, and that is the clutch slave cylinder. So, need to figure out where that's gonna go. So I think I got an idea, because I was messing around with it a whole lot last night, trying to come up with a bracket and stuff, but I think I got an idea, so check this out. It's either gonna work, it's gonna be garbage. We'll find out. Oh boy, I hope I drilled to the right spot. Little, I don't know, pro tip. Somebody who's had a lot of custom parts made for him and made a lot of custom parts himself, one thing I have learned is whenever you are trying to build something, you know, that is relatively custom and specialized, for me, I actually want to use this, right? Like, we took that on the Arizona Peace Trail and lived out of it for a week. I would love to be able to do something like that with this. The problem becomes, what if you break out there, right? I don't have the plasma table, I don't have my welder, I don't have, you know, all this stuff to fix it. So you need to kind of keep that in mind, right? So my plan is, if I can use a stock slave cylinder, then I have the ability to at least go to a Suzuki dealership and go get one, right, to be able to get back on the road. Hopefully they'll have one in stock, who knows. But always try to use as many stock parts as you can, right, in order to minimize the amount of troubles that you're going to have if you're actually going to try to use it a lot, right? Like if it's just something for fun that you're going to kind of mess with, you know, then no big deal. But just a little, you know, food for thought.
A few moments later.
Finally done machining stuff. So clutch rod extension, basically male, female. So like I said, you need to make sure that you can buy parts for, you know, whatever. So the odds of bending a clutch rod, very, very slim, but this little rod will bend before this, you know, spacer does, right? So I machined it so that it'll take a stock rod so that you don't have to do anything to it, right? So I can just take it off, put it on a new one. Again, that way when you're out in the middle of nowhere and something happens, it's gonna be okay. Also, spacers. So let's throw it on there and let's see if it's gonna work. Spacers. New, longer, more better clutch rod. Okay, goes there. Clutch rod is seated. So my spacers are a little long. I could shorten the spacers up by, gosh, 1/8 of an inch, but I don't know if that's really worth doing. Just, out of safety's sake, never hurt to have a little more room. But dare I say, this is actually starting to look like it may just work. So I know you guys are probably thinking, wow, that I don't know, I guess output shaft is kind of long and unsupported. So I got us a pillow block bearing for that, right? So that's actually gonna sit on here like this. And so now I just need to cut out a bracket that will go, in here and support it. So, got the pillow block bearing almost mounted up. I need to order a different sized, whatchamacallit. Progress has been made, finally. So the clutch slave cylinder setup, done, dialed. Our clutch rod extension, money. That is all done. Clutch, so got, banjo fitting there. This is the clutch line that I have run from up front, and I'm just waiting on a 2-foot hose, to get us the rest of the way. The shifter actually does stuff now. So, right? And then neutral. Lower shaft is done, ready to go. Upper sprocket, right? It's gonna go somewhere in this area, whatever makes it a straight line. Now, for the chain, I still don't know if this is gonna work. I give this a solid shot at failure. All right, there's 3 kind of chains. We got a 520, a 530, and then this one. So, 520 chain, found on most full-size dirt bikes, 250s, 450s, that kind of a thing. That is a 950. That has a 530 chain. So that's you. That's the guy she tells you not to worry about. This is a 60 series chain. This is a 520 series chain. So when you look at the two, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference. It's a little thick. So I'm hoping that this chain is going to work for us. If it does not, my plan B is, I don't know. So yeah, we're going to figure that one out. Okay. Challenge, chain tension. As you can see, she's a little loose. When I say a little, I mean a lot. We need to figure out how we're going to do chain tension. I do have an idler sprocket that could go in here. Downside is an idler sprocket is always a possibility for failure. Ideally, I'd like to be able to make the engine move, like that. Downside of doing that is it's complicated, and we'd have to move this pillow block bearing with it. So it's like we need this whole bar to come up and go down. I don't think I need a lot of adjustment. I think realistically, inch and a half total, would be awesome. Yeah, that's the next challenge.